Hello there. Welcome. We're so excited to have you today, joining me and Catherine, who told me they prefer to go by Kathy unless they're in trouble. So we'll call you Kathy. Thank you for joining us for our event today, all about feeling stuck, hesitant, or unsure if it's OCD. So you're going to learn a little bit about my journey with OCD, and I'm also going to touch on some things that NOCD has to offer, and we'll answer some questions that are coming up from people. Anyone here who's watching, you're welcome to submit questions and we will acknowledge them. You can put your questions into the Q&A section. You should see the button on the bottom of your Zoom screen. So we're going to continue introducing ourselves a little bit, and then we'll get deeper into the topic about if you're feeling stuck, hesitant, or unsure if what you're experiencing is OCD. We'll talk more about that. But first, Catherine, please introduce yourself. Or sorry, Kathy.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. I told Andrea yesterday that if I hear Catherine, it usually means I'm in trouble. And if I hear Catherine Elizabeth, I'm really in trouble. So yeah, that's usually what I tell people. But hi, everyone. I am so glad that you joined us tonight. Again, I am Kathy. I'm one of the NOCD therapists here. Um, my story is actually I've been a therapist now for 26 years, which makes me a little sick to my stomach that I can be in a career that long. Um, I have worked in a variety of different places with different types of people. I've done everything from kids to geriatrics, so I run the gamut. Um, but when I started here with no CD, I was working in nursing homes and I figured I needed a little bit of shift after COVID. COVID really burnt me out. And I found NoCD's website, love the mission, love the idea of it. Um, when I started, the training, you don't realize as a therapist what you don't know until you start getting into an intensive training program like they provide here. And I will say I've been here and I absolutely love working at NoCD and I love working with our members. It's so gratifying. So I am so glad you're all here. It'll be awesome. Like Andrea said, any questions you have, put them in that Q&A and we will do our best to answer as many as we can. So all right, Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can talk about your story. How's that?
Sounds good. Thank you. It was great to hear more about you too, Kathy.
Thanks.
So I work here on the intake team at NOCD, and I have lived experience with OCD as well. I'm an open book, so I have no problem sharing my age. And I just feel like timeline gives context. So I'm 34 years old. Looking back, I realized I had OCD since age 7. Like I remember that's when some symptoms started to come up. I wasn't diagnosed until age 31. So that was 3 years ago. So most of my life living with what at times would be really crippling and debilitating OCD, fluctuating off and on as OCD does, it waxes and wanes. But the whole time, pardon me, I think I might be getting a little sick, so I might cough a couple times. The whole time, so I'm in and out of therapy. It's not that I wasn't getting mental health care at all. I was, but the whole time I was told it's anxiety, it's generalized anxiety. So I was treated with cognitive behavioral therapy, general talk therapy, which never really helped. I would go in and out of therapists, meet different ones because I just never felt like I was making the progress that I wanted to. And then I got to a point where I just felt like, okay, well, here I am in my late 20s. I've been in and out of therapy my whole life. I still feel so messed up. I'm panic attacks, horrifying fears. There must be something uniquely wrong with me that can never be diagnosed. No one knows what this is. I'm doomed. I'm a lost cause. And that's also OCD thinking. I know that now. But one day, finally, after decades, one of my therapists identified it, that it was OCD that I had been experiencing all along. I had known this therapist for years. And part of it was not just with her, but with everyone. There's such a lack of real understanding of what OCD actually is, even with therapists, even in the mental health world. I talk to people all day in my role here on the intake team with stories just like mine, where people are like, I had this my whole life and I'd been to therapy and no one caught it until now. So that's what happened to me. So part of that was, yeah, the lack of awareness. And also part of it was opening up about some of these thoughts and fears is intimidating. I was worried about being judged or locked up. I know a lot of people feel that with OCD. So
Mhm.
finally, after 2 years with this therapist, I found the courage to share a little bit more about what I had been experiencing, some intrusive thoughts. And once I did, she was like, "This sounds like OCD." And I'd been looking into this. She said she'd been looking more into it. And she's like, "I think some of the other things that you're experiencing are too." And then I went home that night. I remember that day. It was May 10th, 2022. I went home that night. I started reading about OCD and I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what it has been the whole time. This makes sense. So finally, in the last couple of years, I've been able to get into specialized treatment for OCD. And it has been a game changer. That was the missing piece all along. Doing ERP and like meeting with OCD specialists, I'm in such a different place. I really struggled with addiction because of my untreated mental health. I struggled to hold a job because things were so bad. So I've been sober for a few years now. I'm working again here, working at this role. So I just like got my life back. I've got a peace back that I didn't know was possible. I say back, I don't know if I ever had it until now because it was like, it was hard. It was hard living with undiagnosed OCD. And in terms of themes and subtypes, um, I have like a few main ones. If you are on the NOCD app or community, you might have seen me share some of my story. But really, you can name any OCD theme, and I've experienced it at some point, even if briefly or for a prolonged period. So my themes have switched a lot over the years. My biggest ones are existential, harm, especially with suicide, and what was the other one? I wrote about it recently. Health and somatic OCD. Also had periods, prolonged periods where like moral fears and scrupulosity, contamination. It really, it fluctuates a lot. So like I said, you can name an OCD theme. I've experienced it. But what I've learned through treatment is that no matter how it changes or presents, like it's all the same underneath. It's all the same OCD cycle. It's all the same fears of uncertainty and doubt. So learning to kind of treat the core of that has helped me with all the things that I experience. And I've just felt like a ton of peace. And it's been really personally rewarding to work as an intake specialist here. I get to talk to people all day, every day about their experience with OCD and finding out that they might have it and getting them set up with treatment. So I get to talk to people and just it helps me, it helps them because we all get to see that we're not alone. I just feel like there's so many people you just don't get it unless you've lived it, I think, like, or you don't get it fully unless you've lived it. So I get to talk to people who get it. I get to let them know that, hey, I get it too, and you're in good hands. You're in a place where you can find relief from this, because I know it can be really disheartening and difficult to hold on to hope when you've been struggling and haven't gotten the right care for a really long time. But once I'm talking to someone on the line with them at NOCD, I can be like, you're in the right place. And I'll share with you a little bit about like some of the things that NOCD has to offer. So first of all, there's of course that evidence-based care, the ERP treatment. It's very well researched, been around for decades. We know it works to provide relief from all types of OCD. So we use that here. And we, of course, can provide an assessment and discuss like a diagnosis for OCD. Our therapists, as Kathy touched on, go through a really intensive training program to become specialists in OCD or specialists in OCD and ERP. So they're experts at that. It's a very intensive program. I went for lunch with a couple NOCD therapists who live near me the other day, and I asked them about that program, and they were like, it's so hard. So I was like, okay, all right. Yeah, they really run them through the gamut there, make sure that they are experts. We have that here. We also have the app, our NOCD app, an online community. You'll see me posting around there. Kathy, do you post on there too? I think you
I
do. Yeah.
have been, yeah.
Yeah. We have, posts from people like you, people who might be getting treatment or thinking about it or are getting treatment. We have people from our team, like we have therapists, intake team members, people who have done NOCD therapy and kind of been through the program. We're all on there to chat and connect and give advice and tips and help us all not feel alone. We also offer at NOCD a variety of different support groups, like video support groups on a Zoom call like this. I think there's at least one every day, multiple every day, if I'm not incorrect. There's roughly 30 of them for like all different types of specialties, like taboo OCD topics, like ADHD and OCD. There's family support groups, LGBTQ plus and OCD. That's just a few of them. There's a bunch of different support groups
Mhm.
that you can join. That's at no additional cost when you're doing treatment here. We also have our member advocate team. These are people who've also been through NOCD treatment, and they focus on like wellness and supporting you through the journey. They can help you with any questions you have about treatment. They're like your go-to team for anything that you need, the member advocates. And you also have access to support from your therapist whenever you need it. Between sessions, if you need help, you can contact them. We have a secure messaging system. You can contact them between sessions for anything that you need. And we have a lot, pardon me, a lot of resources in
Mhm.
our app, blogs, articles, homework, therapy tools. We have all kinds of things in there. So yeah, that's us and me and Kathy and a little bit about NoCD and what NoCD offers. And I will hand it back over to Kathy.
Thank you. And first of all, congratulations not only on your OCD, but your recovery, but also your substance abuse recovery. Like that's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's See, that is not uncommon because when you're dealing with something that nobody seems to be able to treat, it is hopeless. And you do turn to different things to make yourself feel better. So, but congratulations. That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, so, hey, yes, Andrea said, our vigorous training program, we get trained for 12 weeks on OCD and on ERP and some of the other things that we treat. It is incredible. I will say that, so in my experience, I have two master's degrees, one in counseling psychology and one in social work. And in neither of my programs did I spend more than a half a day, maybe, on OCD and ERP. So when we talk about the mental health field in general, most people are misdiagnosed and they're given generalized anxiety, they're given depression, they're given ADHD. Kids, we treat kids as young as 5, and I've had kids that have come to me with oppositional defiant disorder, and what they really had was OCD. Um, it really is a lack of training in the mental health field. So this is why the program through NOCD is so important because they're bringing us in as therapists, but they're giving us the knowledge we need to make sure that our members are successful, and that is so important. um, the idea of seeking treatment is scary. It's scary for anybody. Okay. But with OCD, it's so different because you have all these different themes, right? And you can have themes like the stereotypical, contamination, washing hands, right? When people think of OCD, that's what they think of. They don't think of, you know, harm, the fear of harm, right? They don't think of some of the more taboo subjects that we deal with. And so that makes people feel very ashamed and very guilt ridden. And it actually is a barrier to treatment. Okay. It's really difficult. So when you're thinking about treatment, the idea of, well, what is the right amount of OCD to have before I get into treatment, right? There is no right or wrong amount of OCD. What Whether you have one theme or you have 5 themes, it doesn't matter. Okay. If it is disturbing you, if it's disrupting your life, if you are feeling down, hopeless, like you can't function, or even if it's just bothering you a little bit, it's enough to come in and get evaluated. You know, so when we talk about getting evaluated, it is one session where we will sit down and just listen to your story, right? On the therapist side, it's kind of funny because we have all these questions and all these things that we need to, all these diagnoses and criteria that we need to meet. But at least on my part and most of my colleagues' parts, the real part of that, or that the real goal of that first session, is really to get to know you, and is to get to know who you are and what you're dealing with and how can we help you. Okay. I have had people come to me and say, I do have contamination fears. And it bothers me, but it's not interrupting my day-to-day life yet. I just don't want it to get there. And, they may be with me for a shorter time, but we can get them to a point where they don't have to worry as much about it. Okay. I have also had people who had been on disability and stopped working and stopped leaving her house because she was so afraid that she was going to get sick and throw up. And you know what? That same person is now married. She had a huge wedding. She is working. She just got back from a trip to Arizona, which she swore she'd never fly on a plane. We got her on a plane. All of these things because of ERP. Okay. I encourage you that if there is any thought that you may have OCD, come get evaluated. Let us tell you what's really going on. Okay. It is interesting when we talk about ERP, exposure response prevention is not your typical talk therapy. That if you know anything, you walk away with it is not talk therapy. Okay. All of us, I should say most of us, have been through talk therapy where you sit and for an hour and you spill, right? And you get it out and you feel better. ERP is very different. Yes, I'm going to ask you how you're feeling. Yes, I want to know how did your homework go? How are you feeling? How's your OCD? But we are going to really focus on the behaviors and changing your behavior so that OCD can get off your back a little bit. All right. The more you practice, the better you get at. OCD is really a cycle. It is the intrusive thoughts that you get, right? And intrusive thoughts really can be anything. As long as that thought gets stuck in your head, that's an intrusive thought. The good news is we all get them, whether you have OCD or not. The difference is without OCD, I can have an intrusive thought and go, oh, that was gross. All right, move on with my day. For somebody with OCD, that thought gets stuck. And now we're thinking about it. And we're like a hamster on a wheel, thinking about it. And it makes us uncomfortable. And we feel scared and alone. And then your brain says, hey, but if you do this one thing, this one time, it's going to make you feel better. So you do the thing. That's the compulsion. And I want to clear up something. Compulsions, most people think of behavior. When we say compulsions, everybody thinks knocking on wood, washing our hands, doing certain rituals, checking knobs on stoves, things like that. But there is a whole nother side to compulsions, and they are all mental. I was kind of perusing the Q&A really quickly, and I saw in there somebody asked about Pure O. Here's the thing with Pure O, okay? You don't have physical compulsions, but what you do have are probably mental compulsions. Mental compulsions are things like ruminating, mentally reviewing things that you've done in the past to see what did I do wrong or what could I have done better, right? And this will take up hours of your day. Hours of your day. Mental compulsions can be things like hypothesizing. That's a really big word. But really what it means is, you're thinking about something and you're saying, well, if I would have said this, then they would have said this, then this would have happened, and maybe it would have turned out differently. Okay? Or wishing, I wish this wasn't like that. I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish. These are all types of mental compulsions. There are so many others too. Okay, we could be here. That could be a whole hour-long webinar in and of itself.
An endless list.
Okay,
It can be anything.
endless
Anything and
list.
everything.
Exactly. That is the one thing I learned and I take with me every day. Anything can become a compulsion. I even have had members whose therapy became a compulsion. As soon as we had an increase in distress, we were online booking appointments, right?
I've done that.
There, see, it's true. It's true. It happens. And so those compulsions make you feel better in the moment. You feel like I can handle this. Problem is that once that anxiety or once that intrusive thought comes back, here comes everything else, the negative emotions and the compulsion. And after a while, OCD is going to say, remember how I made you knock on wood 3 times last time you felt this way? Now I want you to do it 7 or 79. I had one girl, and God bless her, she's only 14 years old and took 3 hour showers. And if she didn't take 3 hour showers, she wasn't allowed to sleep in her bed. And if she didn't do like an hour-long shower, she wouldn't be able to sleep on the air mattress next to her bed. And then if she didn't shower at all, she was either on the floor or on a chair in the living room. And I asked her very early on in our relationship, I said, why? 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 How did this start? And she said to me very simply, it didn't start at 3 hours. It started at a half an hour. And then her brain said, you didn't wash your right arm long enough. And then it became 45 minutes. And then she'd do it for 45 minutes. And then, wait a second, now your right shoulder is not right. And she would have to do it until it felt right. And I said to her, I said, what happens? Like 3 hours is a long time to be in the shower. Your hot water heater doesn't hold that much hot water. And she told me she would stand in freezing cold water to make it feel right so she could finish her shower. So, when we talk about OCD, yes, it can be those, and I don't want to minimize anything, it can be what people would say, oh, that's just a little OCD. I hate that term. But it could be just, you may not feel like it's a big thing. But what I need you to understand is that little thing that you're doing could turn into a bigger thing that's going to take up more of your time. Our goal here is to not get rid of the intrusive thoughts. We can't. I get them. Andrea gets them. We all get them. Okay. What we are trying to do is teach you how to not engage in the compulsions so that the intrusive thoughts aren't as scary. And so that you can live the life you want to live. Definitely not the life that OCD wants you to live. Okay. All right, Andrea, do you have anything else before we go to the Q&A and see what's in there?
Yeah, well, I think it would be good to touch specifically on. So I think great job covering like it,
Right.
feeling like what do you do when you feel like it's not bad enough? Awesome.
Yep.
Yes. You deserve help if it's bothering you in any way. And then also the other piece is what if you're not sure if it's OCD? That's something I definitely
Oh.
experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yep.
hear it from people on intake calls all the time. And I see it on our in-app like community message boards all the
Yep.
time. People are just like, they're not sure. And I think a lot of that is because of exactly what we've been talking about here, just the lack of awareness, not only in the mental health world, but the world in general of what
The
OCD
whole world.
is. There's
Yes. Yeah.
stereotypes. And for so many people, myself included, it doesn't match those stereotypes or what the cultural understanding of OCD is. And that cultural understanding is so narrow. There's so much more to it. It can present in so many
So much
different
more.
ways. So I know for
Yep.
me,
Yep.
finding out like my biggest theme at the time when I was diagnosed, it was crippling, was existential, constant questions about who am I? Why am I here? Who made us? What is life? Is God real? Am I real?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that was not something you hear about with OCD. So then I was questioning, like, is this even really OCD? How do I know? So then I'd be reassured seeking and making sure these types of OCD is a thing. But that was really common,
Yeah.
is just wondering, like, how do I know this is really OCD? Yeah,
Yeah.
part of that is just the lack of understanding. And also, OCD is nicknamed the doubting disorder for a reason. It'll have you doubting if you have OCD. That is so
Yes.
common. So I hear people on the phone all the time in my role who are like, I don't know if this is really OCD or if it's something different or got misdiagnosed. And I'm like, not that this isn't a valid concern. I felt it too. I know that's concerning, but it's like, I've heard 8 other people say this today. Like, it's so common. OCD will literally have you
Mm-hmm.
doubting OCD itself. So if you're doubting
Yes,
that
it
you
will.
have OCD, That's a sign right there. That's something to look at.
Sign.
And there's
It's
nothing,
definitely a sign.
it is, yes.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to lose just from getting an assessment and ruling it in or out. Like your first appointment at NOCD is all about that. Yeah, getting to know you, doing that assessment for OCD. Well, you can find out there's nothing to lose from that. And even as I say that, I do remember one person said, well, there is something to lose because what if I find out it's not OCD and then I'm doomed and I'll never be treated? And all I had to say was, there's the doubt again. It's the doubt.
Yeah.
There's no end
Get
to that.
assessed.
It'll keep going and going and going, and the way out is ERP. So
ERP.
yeah.
And you bring up a good point about the assessments, right? Because the OCD is the presence of intrusive thoughts and the compulsions. And so when okay, I do physical, okay, I do mental compulsions, how we diagnose is literally making sure that there are intrusive thoughts, making sure that there are compulsions, and then assessing how much does this distress you? How much does this disturb you? How much is it disturbing your life? But also, how long in a day, how long does it take for you to deal with these thoughts? Right? Because the criteria is it's got to be over an hour. Some people don't realize that they're thinking for more than an hour, right? So that's why it's really important to get assessed. Other important thing is, you know, yes, we're called NOCD. Our focus is OCD, but we can also treat all kinds of other anxiety disorders. ERP works for generalized anxiety, specific phobias. It works for social anxiety. It works for all kinds of anxiety. And so it really doesn't hurt to get assessed and see where you are. If it's not OCD, we're going to find it. We're going to find what it is because we've got a lot of tools to figure out what's going on. I have been here actually a little over 2 years now, and there's not one person that I've met in all these 2 years that I haven't been able to diagnose. And even if I'm not sure, the beautiful part about NOCD is we have groups of people, supervisors, consultation groups, where we as therapists can go and say, hey, I saw a member, this is how they present. What do you think? Could it be? Could it be something different? So, I think it is important that we say, even if you have a little bit of a doubt, you're right. OCD is the doubting disorder. It's going to make you doubt whether you got OCD, without a doubt, right? Then let's get it assessed. Let's get assessed and see what happens. Okay.
Yep. There's no commitment. You can do one assessment and that's it. It's,
and that's it.
Yeah. It's
absolutely.
Okay. Well,
okay. Let's see.
Let's get into the
question. What amount of questions?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. All right. There was a couple I saw about the chat says it's disabled. I think that's been taken care of.
Okay.
All right. How do you know when the symptoms are OCD related or anxiety or something else? I have symptoms that could be diagnosed as depression, anxiety, ADHD, etc. So many symptoms overlap. I don't have any physical compulsions, only intrusive thoughts. Okay. Good question. And really, you're absolutely right. The reason why so many people get misdiagnosed with other things before they're diagnosed with OCD is because there is an overlap in symptoms. Absolutely. The one thing I will say is that I have had a lot of people who've come to me with depression, generalized anxiety disorder, ADHD, and after they've gone through ERP, the depression's pretty much gone. Okay. Their ADHD symptoms are better and their anxiety is lower. The reason is because all of those three different diagnoses are similar to OCD and they were just misdiagnosed. Get assessed. In a way, yes, it matters, but in a way it doesn't matter because ERP is going to take it ERP is going to fix it. ERP is going to make it better. So definitely go get assessed. Let's see. Let's see what else do we have here.
I have a
Any
question here I've
thoughts?
been looking at
Go
from,
ahead, go,
yeah,
please,
Jay
please.
Sedell. Sorry, I probably pronounced that wrong. But they asked, what is the cost of an assessment and do you take insurance for sessions? So yes, we do take insurance. We are a network with many plans across the US. The cash rate for an assessment session and for all 60-minute sessions is $240. But you can get signed up for like an intake call. We'll talk more about that later. And we can like take a preliminary check on your insurance, find out if you're in network. We're a network with a lot of plans. And if you're not, I always like to really emphasize to people, even if you're out of network, find out about your out of network coverage. Most people don't know about that because insurance companies aren't exactly like shouting it from the rooftops, but most plans do have some level of like reimbursement that they can provide for care that you have to seek that's out of network. And we're happy to help with that too at NOCD. So we are a network with many plans. If you're not, we still have options. We have payment plans as well. But yeah, I wanted to answer that real quick for that member.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Yes.
The thoughts on pure OCD. So we did talk about pure OCD a little bit. Yeah, you in a lot of ways with pure OCD, you're looking at mostly mental compulsions. You have the intrusive thoughts. There's probably a lot of ruminating, so thinking about it, trying to figure it out. Um, those types of things. We don't necessarily recognize that as being a compulsion, but it is. It is absolutely a compulsion. So that is um, definitely the compulsions are there. They're just a little bit harder to determine for a lot of people. Use book to read to help with OCD. Ooh, this is a good one. So there are a lot of books on OCD. And so I'm going to turn around because you see my bookshelf over here. Um, Freedom from Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. That's Jonathan Grayson. That's a good one. That is a one, but that's a good one that I have used. I've got a couple around here. Relationship OCD is another one that I've used a lot. There is one written by Chrissy Hodges called Pure O. And that is just her memoir. It's really her story of her struggles with OCD. That is a really good one if you want somebody's perspective on their own OCD. Anything by Jonathan Grayson, I would say absolutely. He's kind of like one of our gurus. So, but there can be a lot. If you're really interested, I'm sure that we have a list somewhere. If you want to tuck into the intake team, Andrea, you could probably help. And let me know where I can reach out to you, and then I can give you a list. Okay, I'm certainly okay with that. Let's see. Next one, is exposure response therapy the only solution? That is a great question. Okay. ERP is the gold standard of treatment. It is the treatment that has been most studied. It is evidence-based, and it is the one that has proven to be most effective. Now, with saying that, there is something called inference-based CBT, which is people are starting to ask about it. I'm not trained in it, so I can't give you exactly, is it good or not?
I did it briefly.
Oh, did
Yeah,
you?
I have people who ask about it on
What's your
intake calls too.
experience?
Yeah. It was good. It
Well,
was
what was
helpful. I did it for a few months and I was doing the out of network reimbursement with that. And then I found out NOCD had in network. And I was like, well, I know ERP is effective too, and it's just going to be easier with being in network. So I switched over to NOCD, but I did it. I mean, I found it helpful. It certainly helped bring some relief. And then continuing with ERP brought it even further. I know it is, my therapist said it was like more popular in Europe, but it's like starting to come over. So I've been
starting?
yeah, I've been wondering, maybe NOCD might look into that more and we could add that to our toolbox in the future. Who knows?
Who knows? We may. I don't know. It is starting to come over. So, but ERP is the gold standard of treatment. So that's kind of what we go by.
Yeah, we know it works. It's
we know it works. Yes, we do.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about determining whether it's whether or not it's just OCD or a spiritual problem or lack of faith. Oh, this is from Angela. Angela, I will tell you that usually it is OCD, usually. Um, because and this is an interesting kind of topic because scrupulosity is one of the themes, and that is really about doubting your spiritual health, doubting your faith. In a lot of ways, that is more OCD than a spiritual problem. Okay. It's really difficult because, I don't think a lot of people think, oh, I have a spiritual problem, right? But when you have OCD, I hear that a lot. I have a lack of faith. No, you might just have the Downing disorder. So what I would say is is get assessed. Let's see what it is. Are you spending more than an hour a day thinking about your faith? Are you doing compulsions to make yourself feel better? It is something to consider and maybe to research. Okay. Or I should say seek treatment. Researching is not a good thing. That can become a compulsion. Everybody stay off Reddit. As a
Stay
therapist,
off Google.
stay off. Stay off. Reddit is the worst because I never see anything good on Reddit. It's always bad things. So stay off Reddit.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Laura, I'm struggling to know what my themes are. All my therapists keep focusing on my contamination fears. My contamination fears is only C19 based on sometimes I think that it's only trauma related. Okay. So here's what I will say. And you can back me up on this, Andrea, okay? Because you've had some themes. In a way, the I don't hate to say it this way. The easy one to work on is contamination because that's the stereotypical OCD,
Yeah.
right?
That's what I was wondering because Laura says like all my therapists want to focus on contamination and is like, is that because that's the only one they really understand or are informed of?
Yep. It very well could be. It
Yeah.
very well could be. And it depends too on how they're addressing it, right? The thing with ERP is we might start with your contamination. We may say, okay, here are the exposures. Here's what we're going to do. But then we can move on to other themes. In reality, it doesn't matter what the theme is. You tell me what the intrusive thought is. You tell me what the compulsions are. I'll treat it. Contamination may only be one part of your OCD. The treatment is always going to be the same. It's always going to be the same. It's going to be exposing you to those fears and helping you realize that you can handle them and they're not as bad as what OCD thinks is going to happen. And one of my favorite things to do in session is have people write their worst case scenarios. And one of my members has actually, the one who was disabled and everything, her fear of going on a plane was that she would get sick and that she would go through every sick bag on the plane and that she would then start throwing up all over the plane. And then everybody else on the plane was going to start throwing up. And then the pilot was going to start throwing up. And the plane was going to be so heavy with vomit, it was going to fall out of the sky. And that was her fear. When she wrote it out as a worst case scenario, she looked at it and looked at me and said, my brain is not very nice, is it? But she was able to see how her OCD was giving her illogical fears. So it kind of doesn't matter what the theme is. We're going to treat it the same way. We're going to help you determine what are your intrusive thoughts and what are the steps that we can take to challenge those intrusive thoughts. So I hope that helps.
I saw Laura.
See.
Oh, so I want to touch on what the second part Laura said, thinking it's only trauma
Go
related.
ahead.
I just wanted to touch
Oh,
on
yes.
I've done therapy for trauma and for OCD. They certainly can play into each other. It can be, OCD can latch on to traumatic things or traumatic things that have happened to you. That's a real thing. So if you're wondering, is it trauma or is it OCD? again, just get that assessment and we'll help you at NOCD, we'll help you weed that out, what's what. And we have therapists who can treat trauma and OCD and therapists who are understanding of trauma. So we can
Absolutely.
investigate that for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good catch, because I totally went over the
It's
trauma.
okay.
Um, okay, why does OCD take so long to diagnose? So Tim, that is a really, really good question. Um, and really it's because that the mental health industry is not well versed in OCD.
It's the lack of awareness.
It's the
That's why
lack
I'm
of
just
awareness.
always talking about OCD because if more people knew, if I knew when I was younger, I could have gotten help so much sooner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, this one's from Anonymous. I'm struggling with harm, OCD, and anxiety is high. How do I deal with my body? Oh, feeling like it's on autopilot, arms tingly, and just stuck in my head 24/7. Harm OCD is really scary. And it is one of the, not that any of the other ones are not, but harm OCD is particularly scary because it's the fear that you're going to do harm to yourself or harm to people that you love. And so, yes, that is absolutely going to increase your anxiety and just be stuck in it. Um, the feeling like your body's on autopilot or thinking that your arms are tingly. Um, when we are anxious, for a lot of us, that shows up physically in our bodies. And so for you, it is the cycle of to have the intrusive thought, I feel high anxiety. Oh my gosh, now my arms are tingly, right? It almost can feel almost like you're having a panic attack, or some people do have a panic attack. The question is, how do you react to those feelings? What are the compulsions? Remember, when we first started, we said compulsions are going to make your OCD worse. The more you give in to what OCD wants, the more it comes back, and the louder it gets, and the more it wants. So it would be a lot of it from what reading into this is actually just OCD cycle. And how you really get rid of that is recognizing that these thoughts, while very uncomfortable and make you very upset, are just thoughts. And that the reality is that you are not your thoughts. OCD likes to pick on things like what you love the most in your life or what means the most to you in your life. OCD is really good at making you feel like you are a horrible person by giving you thoughts that are completely against your values. That's what harm OCD does. That's what OCD does in general. And so it really is about trying to reduce the compulsions and learning that you can handle it. It is difficult, but you can handle it. Okay. All right. Laura, can you explain how good OCD therapy would look like when starting with a new client? Well, that is a really good question. Is good OCD therapy? What the hell? Say, what does good OCD therapy look like? Actually, what it looks like in the first couple sessions, it actually seems kind of boring in a way. Okay. Your
The
first
action doesn't
session,
really start till session 3, right? Yeah.
exactly. The action starts in session 3. 1 and 2 is really about building the relationship between you and your therapist. It is about getting your diagnosis. It is about getting you comfortable with the process. It's a lot of education in those first 2 sessions. We bombard you with education about what's going on with you so that you can understand moving forward how this is going to be better. Okay. In session 3, that's when we really start to do the work. At the end of session 2, we actually ask you to track your intrusive thoughts and track your compulsions. And how do these show up for you? Because then in session 3, we go over that and then we start building your hierarchy. A hierarchy is actually the fear ladder. It is the list of activities that we are going to do together to help you decrease those feelings and learn that we can handle this. Right? Was that your experience, Laura? Or Andrea, was that your experience? Sorry.
It was, yes, it absolutely
Yeah.
was. And
Yeah.
I want to touch a little bit more on the fear hierarchy and kind of what you're talking about
Yep.
there with those first two sessions are all about planning. I know for a lot of
Hmm.
people I talk to in my role when they're getting signed up, they're a little intimidated by ERP, which is valid. It's,
Hmm.
the idea of exposing yourself to the things that trigger you doesn't sound like the best time. It is effective though. And so I just really like to assure people that that hierarchy that Kathy talked about, that is building up from like your smallest fears to your biggest one. We're always going to go really gradually with ERP. You're never going to have your biggest fear thrown at you. It's not effective. It's not comforting. It doesn't help. I always tell people it's like, we're not throwing you into the deep end of the pool. We are going to tiptoe to the edge, maybe dip a toe in, and
Hmm.
maybe one day we'll make it down to the end. And also, I really like to emphasize to people that you are like your collaboration and your consent with ERP is key. So that's why Kathy's talking about you're going to build that hierarchy together. You're going to come up with a plan together. You're never going to have an exposure thrown at you that you didn't already agree to and plan for. So that's a key part. I just like to emphasize for that for
Hmm.
people because I know it can be a little intimidating, or if you're unsure if this is something you want to move forward with, you're in the driver's seat for all of it, and it's
Yeah.
gradual.
Yeah. It is gradual. I I I always tell people in for those first couple sessions, I say, I'm not throwing you into the deep end of the pool because one, I want you to get better. Two, I want you to come back,
Yeah,
right? And if I
it doesn't
throw
work. It
you
just
in,
scares people away.
it scares people away. It scares
Yeah.
people away. And we recognize that as therapists, we recognize, and that's why, the emphasis on the collaboration is really important because I tell my members, look, I can throw ideas at you of exposures. I can do all kinds of things, but I need you to be honest with me and tell me, how do these make you feel? Right? If these scare you, or if you're not ready to do an exposure, then let's talk about it. What's going on. Why can't you do it? What is holding you back? And let's work through it. Maybe when we did your exposure, your distress level was a 5 and now it's a 9. Okay, let's talk about it. It's very much a collaborative process.
Yeah.
Very much. All right. Gosh, we got a lot of them. All right. How can we date with OCD? How soon does one reveal their OCD to a potential partner? That is a fantastic question. And everybody's on a different timeline. So people do date with OCD. People have good relationships with OCD. I find that where people get stuck is when their OCD latches onto their relationships. So you get relationship OCD. That can be very, very difficult to manage. It can be managed, and you can have fantastic relationships with people with OCD. As far as how soon does one reveal that to a potential partner, that's really an individual preference. It really is. I could say, oh, after 6 months, after 3 months, really is when you feel comfortable. When you feel comfortable disclosing that information. Would you agree, Andrea?
Yeah, I don't think there's any hard and fast rules on that. I kind of giggled for a moment because I was thinking about my own experience. I was already engaged and now married to the same person that I was when I found out that I had OCD, and he's been very supportive. But I was thinking like, you when do you reveal to someone? And I was just thinking like it's probably going to reveal itself whether you want it to or not. Like if there's certain, depending on the severity or how it might present, there might be things whether you spell it out as OCD or not. But I think I was in a very comfortable relationship where I was open about my mental health journey throughout the whole thing. So I was transparent about it with my partner. In the past, I've had other, like I've struggled with trauma. Eating disorder is a big part of my history too. And I know I have the same questions like, how do I reveal this to someone? When do I reveal this to someone? And I would tell myself, like, first of all, I don't have to. Like, if I don't want to do that, I don't have to. It's entirely up to me. And there really is no right or wrong. Um, and that's probably, and I know us with OCD brains, we hate that. We want that certainty, right? Trying to figure out, well, when's the
Right.
right moment? But it's just something that it's going to be different for everyone. And it's going to depend on the person that you're dating too. Or, are they, how do you feel with them? Are they a safe person you can talk about this stuff with? That's going to impact
Yeah,
how soon you might want to reveal it or not reveal it. So I would just say, feel it out as you go. There's no right or wrong.
that's right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Next one up is Betsy. My sister's name is Betsy, but it's a Y, not an I. Um, I have an OCD therapist, but I feel like I still need emotional support in navigating, sorry, it jumped on me, navigating feelings and thoughts that are coming up. Do you guys recommend this, or will this just fuel my OCD more? Hmm, it's a good question too. I have plenty of members that see me for their OCD and see a talk therapist for the feelings and thoughts. Um, I will also say that I will also deal with your feelings and thoughts in therapy. We definitely are looking at doing and having doing the exposures and doing the activities, but you're still a human being. And so I tend to kind of say, all right, well, how are you feeling first before I do anything else? How are you feeling? Okay. If we have a particularly difficult exposure, let's talk about your thoughts and feelings. I recently had a member who had a very significant loss in her life. And for the last 3 sessions, we have not been doing ERP. We have been navigating her grief and her sense of loss and all the emotions that go with that. So it really is, again, I think a personal preference. I think if your OCD therapist is up for it, that I would bring it up and say, hey, can we talk about the thoughts and feelings? If they're not up for that, then there's no harm in getting an outside therapist for something like that.
I have both.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Um, I think it helps. I do think it helps. All right, this next one. All right, this is from Roland. So I appreciate Andrea's story. Mine is similar with generalized anxiety diagnosis and with alcoholism, sober 26 years. Congratulations. It's
That's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah. A friend shared about their journey with OCD, and I'm now questioning whether it relates to me as well. Can you share about the connection with OCD and skin picking and OCD and hoarding? Yes, we can. We
All
absolutely
under
can.
that same umbrella.
They're all under the same
I
umbrella.
also
Well,
experience body focused repetitive behaviors, by the way. A lot of people with OCD do both.
so I will tell you that I was never diagnosed with OCD, but I was a nail biter for 48 years of my life. These are mine, but it took a while to get them. Um, Actually, it's very common. BFRBs, body focused repetitive behaviors like skin picking, nail biting, even hoarding, which is not a BFRB, but we are trained in it. They are all under the same umbrella as OCD. They're all anxiety based disorders. So it is not unusual to have somebody with OCD who also has skin picking, or somebody with OCD who also has hoarding. It is very, very common. Um, the treatment for skin picking, nail biting, even trichotillomania, which is hair pulling, is a little bit different. It's called habit reversal training. And so we really talk about how to stop the habit of pulling or picking or biting or whatever the habit is. Um, OCD and hoarding. Hoarding is very much an ERP based treatment.
Yeah.
It is a lot of exposure related to hoarding. So, but they definitely are very, very closely related.
Yeah. And at
Yeah.
NOCD, every single therapist that we have is an OCD specialist. And then we have many more who have additional training specifically in hoarding and specifically in body focused repetitive behavior. So we can address all that here too.
Yes. I'm actually trained in both. So
Nice.
I do the HRT, the hoarding. Yep, I do it both. I do both. So it does happen and we can treat it. Angela again, how do specific themes begin? Oh, Well,
I've never
sometimes they
thought
just
about
come up
that.
out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I will be honest with you, sometimes they just come out of nowhere. I've had many members who have been on maintenance and all of a sudden they're like, oh, now I got this different theme and I don't know where it came from. It does happen. Okay. A lot of times OCD will say, okay, I can't get you here. I can't get you on harm. So now I'm going to make you afraid that you're going to throw up. And it just makes this turn. Okay. And it might be something you've never been afraid of before. Sometimes it just happens that way. Sometimes it's a trigger. Sometimes it's somebody says something or you're watching something and all of a sudden in your brain, your OCD says, well, what if that was you? What if you did that? Did you do that? I actually had a member that happened to. He was driving down a road, and this was not his theme, but he was driving down the street and saw um what thought looked like a car accident on the side of the road, and he thought, "Oh my gosh, what if I killed someone? What if I hit someone and I killed them and I don't realize it?" And that started a whole different theme for him that he didn't realize, or he didn't have before. So specific themes, it can be tricky. And sometimes it is triggered by something, sometimes it's just out of nowhere.
With my lived
Yeah.
experience, I think there's some things like we talked a little bit about the overlap with OCD and trauma. Some themes I can tie to like a traumatic event. Some are just exactly what Kathy said, just so random, out of the blue, makes no sense. But here we are terrified.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Um, and Angela also wrote, how often is there a misdiagnosis of OCD? To be honest, I don't have the statistics on that. Andrea, do you? I don't have it.
I don't. And I'm wondering if Angela
Yeah.
means how often do people like misdiagnose, like they're not diagnosed with OCD when they have it, or they're diagnosed with OCD but
Okay.
don't actually have it.
Thank you. Thank you.
It could be, I don't know.
I
Maybe she means one of the two. I don't know.
Well, we can address both.
Yeah.
I will find that most of my members, I have not had a member come to me yet that hasn't been diagnosed with something else and then realizes that it's really OCD and not generalized anxiety, or it's not something different. Um, I, as far as misdiagnosing someone with OCD, I don't know, honestly. I mean, my members, I'm pretty thorough with how I assess for OCD. So, as long as they're telling me that the truth about what they're doing, I'm not really that I know of misdiagnosed someone with OCD. Um, but at the same time, if it's misdiagnosed OCD and it's generalized anxiety disorder, the treatment is the same. Yes, you want the accurate diagnosis, which is what we strive for. Um, but I mean, I'm sure it happens. I don't think it happens very often, especially here because we're so well trained. It would surprise me. It would surprise
there's
me.
there's a lot of science and like research behind these assessments and how we figure that out. And yeah, I'm thinking in
Yes,
like with my role and my own like lived experience, like I've heard a lot of people who have had OCD and found out, but they didn't know it and then found out later that they were wrongly diagnosed and it was actually OCD all along, just like me. I can't even count how many times I've heard that. So far, I've never heard of a single person where it was the other way around, where they were diagnosed with OCD but didn't have it. Again, maybe it
yes.
happens, but it's so unlikely. But OCD will
It's so
latch onto that.
unlikely.
If there's even a chance, so you'll still doubt it. But
Oh yeah, you'll
that's
still doubt it. You're
OCD.
right. You're right. You're right. Let's see. Let's see. There's a few more in here. Um,
Yeah.
do you
And
want to?
we're running a bit past time. I mean, I'm fine to stay a little bit longer. If other people need to leave, that's totally fine. We understand.
That's fine. Yep.
I'm happy to
And I
keep
can
going.
hang around. Absolutely. Yeah, me too. Okay. Was diagnosed with OCD several years back and just started ERP about 3 weeks ago. I have harm OCD and told my therapist, but I'm finding that I'm still so worried that my harm OCD, especially suicide type harm, OCD intrusive thoughts, isn't actually OCD. See, that's where OCD is making you doubt your diagnosis. Absolutely. I'm scared of telling my therapist all my harm thoughts because I'm worried he's going to tell me that it's not actually OCD. I know this is common, but I'm still worried about it. Any advice or thoughts on this? This is absolutely very, very common.
Yeah.
Very, very common. OCD is going to make you doubt your diagnosis. I have had people where their OCD started to attack me and tell them that I didn't know what I was talking about and that I couldn't help them. And when my members told me that, I said, thank you. And the reason why I said thank you is because remember, OCD is going to attack what's most important to you. And at that moment, his therapy was very important to him. Okay. For you, for you, your life is very important to you. And I'm very happy for that. I want you to be happy with your life. Your OCD is making you doubt it. Your OCD is saying, this isn't OCD. No, it's something else. You're really sick. That's when your own brain starts to tell you these kinds of things. It's really, really hard to kind of almost accept that your brain's just telling you lies. Okay. The biggest thing that you can do, I would encourage you to share this with your therapist. Trust me, the therapist has heard a lot. And this is probably not the first time he or she is going to hear this. I encourage you to share it. The more you share, the better treatment you're going to get, without a doubt.
Me
Yeah.
opening up about these thoughts that this member is sharing about suicidal things, finally having the courage to open up, and it's terrifying. It's so scary. What is the therapist going to say? Finally opening up about that was what had my OCD identified for the first time. And I know it's scary, and I don't know if you are have an OCD therapist or a general therapist, depending on the two, they might be more or less understanding about this too. And I understand that that can be scary. But if you're not sure if who you're meeting with is a specialist, again, we have those here. And I am under, I don't know if you got this message, Kathy, but I am under the instruction from the powers that be that we are to wrap up after this question.
Oh, okay.
So thank you
Darn
so
it.
much, everyone, for participating. And I'm sorry we couldn't get to everyone, but if you have any other questions, you're more than welcome to get in touch with NOCD. I wanted to let you guys know as well that we do offer like a free 15-minute call with the intake team. I believe one of our team members is going to drop the link in the chat. So that's a team I work on. You might end up talking to me. These calls are all about, we can answer any of your questions that you have, anything that you had today, the intake team could answer for you. And we can talk a little bit more about ERP treatment. We could take a look at your insurance and talk about maybe getting you set up for an assessment session or just answering any questions that you have. So that is free. That is at your disposal to learn more and talk to us further.
So thank
Okay.
you everybody for coming. We appreciate it. This has been fantastic.
Yes, it was amazing.
Right.
Thank you everyone for sharing and giving questions.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, we're still here if you need us. Get in touch.
Yep, absolutely. Have a
Okay.
good night.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.